Did you know that chicken is the second most consumed meat in the world after pork? And a fun fact that I just made up is that 92% of home-cooked chicken is dry. Chicken often gets a bad rap, but it's one of the most affordable and versatile proteins out there. So today I'm gonna run you through 12 of my favorite ways to cook chicken at home, and then Caitlin, Mitch, and myself are gonna rank them to find out what one we think is the best. We've got a lot of stuff to get through today. It could be a chunky one, so let's get stuck in. And first up, one of my all-time favorites, the roast chicken. But first, we have a question to answer. To brine or not to brine? Well, you can either dry brine or wet brine. And a lot of home cooks and professional chefs love to wet brine chicken. It's a pain, but it does make for a juicier product. And you can effectively brine any of these recipes you want if you choose to do so. If you don't have time, don't stress. The chicken I'm gonna roast today, we're not gonna brine. I'm gonna show you another method to make it just as juicy, I think, and almost a little bit more flavorful. But I will show you how to make a brine. So that way, if you do want to do it, you've got the information that you need. So I like to do a 5% brine. So I've got 2 liters of water here. So I need 100 grams of cooking salt. In the States, you call that kosher salt. Here we call it cooking salt. In that goes. And then we need to flavor it. Parsley stalks, some thyme, bay leaf, black peppercorns. 1 lemon, just cut in half, juiced and shove it in. Stir this until the salt dissolves. You can kind of flavor this with whatever you want, really. But remember, the chicken is gonna absorb this liquid. So you wanna flavor with aromats. Some people put a bit of honey in here. You can put some dried chilies in here. And once all that is dissolved, in your chicken goes. And we're gonna leave that with a plate on it to keep it submerged in the fridge for at least 8 hours, but up to 24 hours for a whole chicken. If you're doing smaller pieces like drumsticks or wings, I'd go 4 to 8 hours. But that's how you wet brine. So how do we roast the chicken without brining it that doesn't go dry and nasty? We start with butter. Got about 150 grams of butter. Into that, we're gonna add the zest of 1 lemon, grate 1 large clove of garlic or 2 small ones into it. Some black pepper, pinch of salt. This is unsalted butter, so if you're using salted butter, maybe go easy on the salt. Then I've got some thyme here. It's pretty young thyme, so I don't need to pick it too aggressively. But keep the stalks, because we're gonna put those stalks in the cavity. Just run your knife through that thyme. You're gonna mix that butter. You cut this lemon that we've got left in half. We've got our thyme there. I've got some butcher's string ready to go. So what we're gonna do with our bird is we're gonna take these wing tips off, so they're not doing much for anyone. If we turn this around and you open this up, you're gonna find there's usually a large amount of fat deposit in here, which isn't too much of an issue, but if it's a bit excessive, you can kind of trim it off. Get our fingers underneath the skin, and just pull it away from the breast. Try not to rip it at all though, all the way down. We're gonna take this butter and shove that in there. If you've got a piping bag, you can also pipe it in there. It's probably a little bit more elegant, but I wouldn't stress too much. So push that butter so it evenly coats the breast. For the rest, we're gonna put that over the legs once we've trussed it up. Now the other thing we're gonna do, which you probably should have done before I stuffed it with butter, is take the wishbone out, and that just makes it easier to carve. It's the only real benefit to it. Take a boning knife, find the wishbone, scrape the inside of that bone. And that just frees it from the flesh. We're gonna run my thumb up the inside there so that bone is, you can see it's exposed, so you can get my finger in it. We'll do the same on the other side, which you probably won't be able to see. And then we're gonna run both of our fingers up this bone to the top and try and break it away from the top all in one piece, just like that. So that wishbone should just pull out now. Like that. So we'll spread that butter all the way down to where that wishbone was. It's looking a bit flat, the chicken, but we're gonna truss it, so it should be fine. So we're gonna stuff the chicken with our lemon and the thyme. In that goes. You do still want a bit of space around it in the cavity. It just lets airflow get around there and it will start to cook it a bit better. And then we're gonna truss the chicken. Take your piece of butcher's twine, bring it underneath the wings, and then we're gonna go over our legs. We're gonna cross, we're gonna wrap around each leg and bring those legs in tight. Just wrap it around again once and then tie it off. This is gonna give us a really nice shape to our chicken. So there you go. We've still got a little bit of butter here, which we're gonna use up. So we'll put that mainly on the legs. We are gonna use some olive oil over the breasts as well. So I've got clean hands again. We've got some olive oil and some salt. So now I've got 1 dirty hand, 1 clean hand. Use a little bit of olive oil and just spread it around and then season it on all sides. Make sure you get that wing, make sure you get the side of that breast. See, I often see people when they're seasoning chickens, they'll just season it like this because they don't want to touch it. But you got to make sure you season it all over. A little bit more oil over the top and just a light seasoning on top of that chicken crown. Why? Because we've got a lot of salt in that butter as well. But that's it, time for the oven. Okay, so that's a fan force oven set to 200 degrees C. If you don't have a fan oven, then shove your oven up to 220. I like to cook my chickens hot and fast. I think you get a better crispy skin and the flesh should be still nice and moist. Now, I'm not a fan of giving methods that are like, for every 500 grams of chicken, you cook it for 40 minutes. I don't think that really works. There's lots of different variables here. So we're gonna go off temperature. More to that when we get to it. I've started a timer and I'll tell you how long this takes, but we're gonna go from temperature. So this has been in the oven for 40 minutes now. We're gonna check the temperature. We're gonna go for the thickest part in the thigh here and see where we're at. So we're at 54, 52 degrees. It's gonna check the breast as well, and that's already at 65. I'm supposed to tell you that you should take your chicken to 74 degrees Celsius, which is this in Fahrenheit. So make sure your chicken's at that temperature. However, I'm gonna pull this out when the thickest part of the thigh reaches 60. Carryover cooking will take another 5 degrees higher. But in the interest of not getting sued, 74 degrees. I reckon that's got another 10 minutes max, and that'll be at that 62 degrees that I'm looking at, the thickest part of the thigh. That took 57 minutes in total for that size chicken, and we are definitely above 72 degrees. So we're gonna let that rest for a good 20 minutes at least, if not half an hour, before we carve it. Then if it's not as hot as you'd like, just once you carve it, flash it back through the oven. Anyway, let's get the team in to find out how it scores. Team.
Juicy chicken, nice skin, lots of lemon. Yeah, this is gonna be a top one for me, I think. I'm gonna give it a 9.
Oh, that's cool.
You can't beat a roast chicken. That was delicious. I'm gonna copy Caitlin, 9 out of 10.
I also do love a roast chicken. However, I think we can do better. I'm gonna go 7. So there you go, the classic roast chicken scored pretty high, 25 out of 30. Next up, smoked chicken. Look what we have here, the Andy Cook's Cooler Tote Bag. Plain black on the back, Andy Cook's on the front, lined on the inside. Perfect for keeping stuff cold. And what we have here, the Andy Cook's Essential Tote. Got some good pockets in there, great for market shopping. Andy Cook's Apron. Look at that, keep yourself clean when you're doing the dishes, when you're cooking. Pocket for your phone. What's this one? The Andy Cook's Protein Press. Perfect for fish, steaks, smash burgers. Lots of good weight to it. Big fan of that one. And of course, the product that started it all, the Andy Cook's Dough Cutter. Essential scraper, we're gonna call it. It's available now, they're all available now. Click the link down below, go get you some. Christmas is coming up, get some for your loved ones. Now, I am fully aware that not everyone has a smoker in their backyard, but this might just be the recipe that makes you wanna get one, because this is probably one of my favorite things to smoke, and it's fully underrated, fully. So we are gonna dry brine these ones. So dry brining, unlike wet brining, as the name suggests, means that we basically heavily salt the chicken or the steak, whatever you're doing. I'm gonna pepper it as well, and we'll flip it over. Same on the other side. And then we'll pop it in the fridge uncovered, 2 hours. The salt dissolves, and then it goes into the pores of the meat, and you should get a more even seasoning all the way through. You can leave it overnight as well. However, I'm okay with leaving raw chicken out uncovered in my fridge for a couple of hours. Probably not super keen on doing it overnight. Flip them back over, and then I'm just gonna give them one last season with salt, especially on the skin side, and that will also help to dry the skin out a little bit, because no one likes rubbery skin on chicken. Into the fridge uncovered for 2 hours. So 2 hours later, and this is what we've got. And you can see here that all the salt has dissolved and turned into liquid, and it's been absorbed by the flesh and the skin, and we've just got the ground pepper left on the top. Now you kind of want to try and take some of that moisture off without taking the pepper off if you can avoid it. So we just pat this dry, because moisture is the enemy to crispy. Now we're not going to get this chicken super crispy. It's just not going to happen. It's kind of not how that works. But what we don't want, what we're trying to avoid, is leathery, rubbery skin to the smoker. So the smoke is sitting at about 110 degrees Celsius, and we're gonna cook these skin side up until they reach an internal temperature of 65 degrees Celsius. These have been smoking for about 45 minutes at this point. They're looking good. Ooh, bang on, they're about 46 degrees. So let's crank this fire up. So we do want this to get pretty hot. What do you think, Ducky? Yeah, it's good. Okay. So now that is cranking, we're gonna lather these up with our barbecue sauce, and fairly heavily. Link above for a recipe for a barbecue sauce. Lid down, 10 minutes max, maybe 12. We just want that glaze to set, and that skin just to cook through a little bit more, and that fat to render underneath it. So that's been 12 minutes, and that peaked at about 150, 160 degrees Celsius. It's come right back down to about 130 now, but we're looking for 75 internal, which we're at. More importantly, when you probe it, there shouldn't be any resistance in the skin. It shouldn't pop like a sausage casing. Probe should just go straight through the skin. Off they come. We'll let those rest for 10 minutes, then we'll get the team in and we'll have a taste.
Sweet and smoky flavor. Not as good as roast though. 6 out of 10.
I really like the smokiness in this one. I don't think it's as juicy as the roast chicken. Still tasty. I will give it a 7.
Nice sweetness. I think the chicken's cooked nicely. I'm a pretty big fan of it. However, I do prefer the skin on the roast chicken, but I'm gonna give it a 7. 20 out of 30, respectable score, not as good as the roast chicken. Next up, beer can chicken. So if you're paranoid about putting a beer can up a chicken's boop because of the paint, then just use a vertical roaster, they're called. You can get them on Amazon, wherever you get your normal kitchen stuff. But there is some method to the madness. Roasting a chicken vertical means you're gonna get much better airflow around the whole chicken. And interestingly enough, the beer's kind of got nothing to do with it. It's just the vehicle that we're using and a bit of liquid in there to steam. I'm sure it's gonna impart some kind of flavor. I was gonna pour the beer out, but I feel like Mitch would get upset with me, so I'll put it in a cup. You can have it for lunch.
Thanks, Chef.
Mitch is very demure. We'll put it in this cup. Dad's session ale. You can season your chicken with whatever you want. I got some barbecue rub. Give it a good douse in olive oil all over. Make sure you get the back on the thighs. Now we season it. Olive oil is kind of more there for a binder, as well as a bit of extra fat. Season in the cavity as well. Oven tray, can, chicken. How good does that look? All right, to the oven. To the oven. So that's a 200-degree fan force oven, and I've faced the breasts towards the fan, so it's gonna get the most amount of heat onto it. But you can cook this in whatever you want, but it needs to be an ovenish thing. So, you know, one of those like Komodo egg style cookers, a smoker, a barbecue with a hood, lots of different ways. Oven's probably the easiest. Woo! It smells good. That's been in there for 45 minutes. Let's check the temperature. Thickest part of the thigh. Oh yeah, that is good. And just check the breast as well to make sure. So here I'm looking for at least kind of 65, it'll carry over cooking to where we need it. That's at about 68, so that is more than cooked. We've got great color all the way around. Let's let it rest for about 20 minutes. Then we'll carefully pull that beer can out. We'll carve it up and get the team in to see how it tastes.
Yeah, that's delicious. That's like a improved supermarket hot chicken.
Whoa, good way to describe it. No, but it's cooked really nicely through, and I love the fact that you get so much good crispy skin.
That's so juicy and just such a cool technique of cooking it. I reckon that's a 8 out of 10 for me.
9 out of 10 for me.
I'm with Mitch, 8 out of 10. With a total of 25 out of 30, that scores pretty well. But next up, one that I think everyone always gets wrong, stir fry. Have you ever wondered why when you get a Chinese takeaway, the chicken always tastes better than it does when you do it at home? Well, it's because of this technique, velveting. Velveting chicken is a little bit different to velveting beef, but I'll show you how to do it. I'm gonna cut the chicken into strips about this big, which is about 1/2 centimeter. I'm gonna season it with salt and then massage it through. Now we're gonna add an egg white. Oh, no, just the white, quick. There we go. That little bit of yolk's all right. It's gonna kind of get weird at this point, I'm not gonna lie. Gonna give it a mix that egg white through, and we're also gonna add water, cold water. So what we're trying to get the chicken to do is actually to absorb that water, and that'll happen through the brine that effectively we've made in there with the salt. But we can also flavor this, right? You can flavor it with kind of whatever you want. I'm just gonna add some white pepper, another classic Chinese takeaway, and a little bit of Shaoxing cooking wine. Keep massaging. And lastly, but most importantly, cornstarch. You can use whatever starch you want. You can use cornstarch, you can use potato starch. The starch is what's gonna really make this start to feel really weird in your hand, but also what's gonna help us keep that moisture in there. Mix that through really well. And for anyone wondering, I know this is corn flour. In Australia, we call cornstarch corn flour. This is gonna get covered and go into my fridge for 45 minutes to an hour, and then we'll cook it. Now this is rested in the fridge. We've got a pot of boiling water here. 2 ways you can cook this. You can cook it in boiling water, or you can do it in oil. Most of the Chinese restaurants, Chinese takeaway restaurants, will do it in water. Once it's boiling, it's gonna drop our chicken into it. We don't need to cook it fully in here. We just need to kind of set the outside effectively. Give it a stir so it breaks up, and let that come back to a simmer. We're going to cook that for about 4 or 5 minutes. All right, this has been cooking for only 3 minutes and it's good to come out. So we're going to put it onto a tray so it can drain any extra moisture. And I know it doesn't look particularly appealing, but it's going to be okay, I promise. Takeaway restaurant, they will cool this down and then they're going to use this to cook to order. Because we're going to cook this straight away, we don't need to cool it down. Wok, high heat. Neutral flavored oil, start with your hardest veg. In this case, red pepper, or capsicum as we call it here in Australia. Once that's almost cooked, add your spring onions, the white part, and your garlic, and time for the chicken. Whatever sauces you're using, I'm gonna use some oyster sauce and soy sauce, and of course, a little bit of yum yum. Green parts of the spring onions, And that's it, we're done. He's got the kids' chopsticks and he still can't do it. Oh,
Oh no. Let's just do this. Here we go.
hold on.
He's got it.
Just in case.
I love it. It's juicy and it's tender. For me, that's an 8 out of 10.
Texture was good. Thought it was going to be a little better, to be honest, and I did get that slimy kind of vibe in my mouth. 4.5 out of 10.
Whoa.
Again, wasn't my favorite, but I actually liked the slimy texture. I don't know. And it had great flavor. I'm going to give it a 6.
So there you go. Total of 18.5. But next up, poached chicken. Anytime I poach anything online, people are like, oh, it's raw or it's boiled, it's disgusting. Poaching is a very classic French technique of cooking and it has its benefits. So if you're making salads or sandwiches, I think poaching is one of the best ways to cook chicken. And it's all about technique. It might not look super appealing, but just try it, trust me. Boiling water, season with salt, some lemon, thyme, bay leaf, and garlic. A few black peppercorns, let that come up to a simmer, and add our chicken breast in, make sure it's completely covered, and put the lid back on. You're gonna bring that up to a light simmer, and then you're gonna turn the temperature right down as low as you can for 10 minutes, then you're gonna turn the heat off completely, and you're gonna leave that pot lid on, no heat, for another 30 minutes, and that'll be some of the nicest chicken breast you've ever had cold. Trust me. 40 minutes later, let's see where we're at. We're gonna slice and serve this now, but I would suggest, if you are gonna serve it cold, is to let the temperature come right down before you store it in the fridge. If you pull this out of the water with the water still hot, it'll dry out. So the longer you leave it in the water, the more moisture it's gonna retain.
Look, I'd eat it in a salad. Probably needs a little more seasoning. 4.5 out of 10.
It's pretty vanilla, but I feel healthy eating it. So I'm going to give it an extra point for that. It's going to go a 5.
I think us eating it like this is doing it a disjustice because it needs to be on a sandwich with lots of mayonnaise or in like a chicken Caesar salad. Other than that, I think it's cooked well and it's seasoned nicely. So I'm gonna give it a 6. 15.5, next up, one of my personal favorites, the Spatchcock. This is basically a butterflied roast chicken and a lot of people swear by it. Even if they're roasting a chicken in the domestic oven, call me a traditionalist. I prefer to roast my birds whole if I'm doing a roast inside. But if I am cooking a chicken outside, I will always spatchcock it, and it's really easy. Take your bird, this is a nice little one, flip it over, and then here, I take the wing tiplets off because they kind of don't do anything and just burn normally. And then here we've got the backbone. So we're gonna cut up each side to remove the backbone. So things to be careful of. Make sure you cut in far here so you don't lose any of that thigh meat on either side. You want a good set of kitchen shears and run your knife up along that backbone. Again on the other side to remove the backbone. And then open it out a little bit. Now I've gone a little bit tight in here. I've missed some of it, so I'm just gonna snip that out. And then in here you've got the rib cage, which I like to try and get as much of it out as I can, because otherwise these bones can be a little bit small and a little bit dangerous. So pull that rib cage part out. Then you pull any of these parts of the kidneys and any of the other offal out, or you can leave it in, doesn't really matter. Now flip the bird over, and we're gonna crack this sternum, the front bone, like you're giving CPR, one hand on top. There you go, you got a nice flat bird. Olive oil all over and on the inside. Salt, and then I'm gonna use some curry powder. But you can season this with whatever you want. Pat that on there, same on the other side. To the grill. Okay, it's a relatively thick piece of meat on the bone. It's gonna take a while to cook, so control your temperature. You kinda want it like a medium temperature. You don't want it too hot, you don't want it too cold. You wanna make sure the grill's hot though when you first put it on. You wanna hear that sizzle, and that means that the skin shouldn't stick. But put it on and just leave it for a while, at least 10 minutes. All right, that looks pretty good. Took about 40 minutes in total. We've reached a temperature of 65 degrees in the thickest part. I'm gonna rest it for a good 10 minutes, then we'll get the team in to eat.
Yeah, that's delicious and juicy. So it's a 9.5.
Juicy, seasoned well, and you definitely taste it's cooked over charcoal. That's a 9 for me.
You can't beat a barbecue style chicken. That is insane. I'll go 9 out of 10 just because 10s are pretty rare for me, but that's incredible.
Well, big score, 27.5 points. I think that leads at the moment. Next up, one that everyone gets wrong, including Caitlin, pan-fried.
When have I ever cooked pan-fried chicken?
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say the only time you should pan-fry a chicken breast is if it has the skin on. If you don't, it's gonna be dry and nasty. There's really no other way around saying it. There's plenty of other techniques to cook chicken breasts in this video. use one of those. But if you do have a chicken with the skin on, this is how you do it. Pan, preferably cast iron or spun steel like this one, on a medium heat. While that's heating up, I dry brine this chicken. So I season it with salt lightly on both sides, I put it back in the fridge, uncovered, and I left it there for an hour. All we're gonna do now is pat dry the top. Olive oil in your pan, let that heat up. Now our chicken breast is nice and dry. Once our oil is up to temperature, I don't want it screaming hot. You just want it up to temperature. Place your chicken breast in with the skin side down. Hear that? A little bit of noise, but nothing crazy. We're gonna turn that temperature down pretty low now. And we're gonna place a protein press on top of it. What that's gonna do is give us great contact with the pan. So we're gonna end up with a delicious, crispy, golden chicken skin and a breast that's cooked nicely all the way through. You will notice in the chicken breast that it's thinner at one end. So to eliminate that, I'm gonna show you a trick once we're ready to flip it to make sure that that doesn't overcook, or we eliminate as much as possible of that overcooking completely. All right, that's been on for about 10 minutes. Let's have a look at how we're going. Looking good. You can see here, we're almost fully cooked through. Thicker part's not quite there yet. Let's have a peek under the hood and see where we're at in terms of color. And as you can see, we're not quite there. So we're gonna turn the heat up, continue cooking that. We can leave the press off now, that's done its work. And we'll just let that skin crisp up and get that cooked all the way through. Once we've got some good color as well, like I was talking about earlier, to stop this end overcooking, we've simply put the fish slice under it to get that off the heat. And this part will continue cooking and this part will stop. So I reckon we're there in terms of color on the underneath. So we're gonna flip it. And because this end's already cooked, we're gonna straight away use our fish slice to keep that off the bottom of the pan so it doesn't overcook. It's only gonna take about 1 more minute like that. If you want, you can chuck some butter in the pan now and nappe it, some garlic, some thyme, classic foamy butter technique. A little butter never hurt anyone. Right at the end there, I'm gonna turn the temperature right down so I don't want that butter to burn. Just let that melt. And what this is gonna do is just give us even more color on the top. Some garlic in there, some thyme, bit of rosemary as well. Onto a resting tray. Let that rest for 10 minutes.
That was lovely. A classic piece of chicken. So I'm gonna give it a 7.5.
Tasted good, quick to cook, neither here nor there. 5 out of 10.
Oh, controversial. I like the texture. Crispy skin, the flesh is cooked really nicely, seasoned well. Doesn't have a huge amount of flavor other than chicken. 7 out of 10. 19.5 out of 10. Respectable-ish score. Subscribe if you thought that pan fried was the same as grilled, because it's not. Next up, grilled chicken. Now, it's always best to be grilling your chicken over a charcoal or a wood fire. However, I do fully understand not everyone has access to a barbecue like that. A gas barbecue also works fine. If you don't have a barbecue, live in an apartment or something, you can do it on a broil function and or boil or grill function on your oven with the heat coming down. Worst comes to worst, you can use one of those pans with the lines in it. Anyway, I like to grill drumsticks because I think that they're easier to hold, they're super affordable, and they take flavor on really well. And this is a marinade that I have been loving lately. It's got a couple of funky ingredients that you might freak out, but trust me, it's delicious. We'll start with the safe stuff, and by all means, if you don't have one of these ingredients, just leave it out, it doesn't matter. Galangal, it looks like ginger, has a very different flavor to ginger. I keep it in the freezer and then I grate it. Kind of hard to find sometimes, so if you can't find it, just leave it out. Fresh turmeric, I also freeze it. Again, if you can't find fresh turmeric, you can just use the ground stuff. Got some fresh ginger here, a couple of big cloves of garlic. Then I got a couple of chilies. These are pretty spicy ones, so I'm gonna use 2. Just gonna dice these nice and small. You can also grate these if you've frozen them as well. Some lime leaves. So with these, you just need to take the stems out, finely slice them. The juice and zest of a lemon or a lime. Pinch of salt, not too much because we're gonna use fish sauce as well. Maybe half a tablespoon of brown sugar. Then this is the one that everyone's gonna freak out about. Shrimp paste with bean oil. So this is like a fermented shrimp paste. It's delicious. It's like an umami bomb. Just like half a tablespoon. Some fish sauce and a little bit of neutral flavored oil. So this is just some peanut oil. Give that all a mix. Into our drumsticks. Make sure it's well mixed around. All right, I'm gonna wash my hands. I'm gonna shove this in the fridge for about 2 hours and then we'll get grilling. Okay, our grilled chicken has been marinating for 2 hours. Now just make sure that your skin is pulled right down over the meat, over a hot grill. Same as the spatchcock, control the temperature. So I am lucky I can control it by moving the grate up and down. So we wanna make sure this is cooked through. It's a thick piece of meat, it's on the bone. It's probably gonna take 25 minutes to cook these drumsticks. And then do not waste all that delicious marinade. Get a little pastry brush and just brush it on as it's cooking. All right, those took about 30 minutes. They are ready to come off. Let those rest for about 10, 15 minutes and then we'll get the team to taste.
Really good flavor, cooked really well. Again, over a fire, so I love it, but 7 out of 10.
That was a bit harsh. It's delicious, and I don't know what seasoning's on it, but I like it. It's a 9.5 for me.
Duck scored it at 8. Yeah, delicious. I'm also probably not a huge drumstick fan. I prefer the thigh, but I think the flavors are great and it's still nice and juicy. 8 for me. All right, 24.5, a pretty respectable score. Next up, the rotisserie. Can we beat a supermarket rotisserie? So in the last like 5 to 10 years, these things have become way more common in the domestic environment. Most barbecues have them, certainly in Australia. Even a lot of ovens have them now. And it is a great way to cook, especially like chickens or roast pieces of meat. It's also a great way to cook if you're camping. I am a big believer that brining works really well with rotisserie. Why? Because the constant turning can sometimes dry stuff out. This is the one that we brined yesterday. It's been in for 24 hours. Pull this thing out of its spath, and then we're just gonna pat it dry really well. Like anything, to get crispy skin on the outside, which is what we're looking for, moisture is the enemy. However, this is going over a charcoal fire. It's gonna dry out pretty quickly, let's be honest. Get in the cavity as well. If you do shove paper towel up the cavity, don't forget to take it out. That has been seasoned. We don't need to put any salt on there. If you want to put a rub on that, you definitely can. If you want to put pepper on it, you also can. I think we're going to leave this one natural just to see how it turns out. And just like the roast, we are going to truss it because I think it just sits on the actual rod a lot better. Okay, time for the rod in the cavity, through the neck. And then this is what really holds it on, is these fork parts here. Don't stab yourself, that'll hurt. Do kind of want to get it pretty centered evenly with the weight, otherwise your motor will have a hard time dealing with it. So push that, make sure that's pushed back onto the rod, if that makes sense, before you shove this top one on. Tighten it up. So see that's gonna be an issue, these wings hanging out more than they should be. So I am gonna put another piece of butcher's twine around that, just to try and keep them in. So all I'm gonna do to that now is just drizzle this with oil and make sure it's evenly coated. That'll help to crisp the skin up also, and on the back. And I'm gonna trim these off because I almost forgot to. And if you don't trim these off, they'll catch fire. Don't forget these juicy thighs. All right, just give my hands a little wash and then to the grill. So these will rotate pretty slowly. And I've got a good bed of wood coal here. Charcoal is probably more efficient because this takes about 2 hours to get a good bit of coal. And we're just gonna monitor that. If we need it to be hotter, we can fan it a little bit. Too hot, we just pull coals away, push coals away. You kind of want the center of the coals really dead set onto that. So we'll just move those. But this is very intuitive cooking. I cannot give you a time for how long this is gonna take. So it's all about what this is doing, what the temperature of the air is doing, lots of things. So like the whole day, this thing is your best friend. It's really hard to know how long this takes to cook without checking the temperature inside. Not quite as much color as I would have liked, but here we are. Let it rest for a good 15 minutes and then we'll cut it up and get the team to taste. It's nicely seasoned and juicy, but 7 out of 10.
I like it. It doesn't have as much flavor as a lot of the other ones that we've had. So yeah, it's gonna go, I don't want to say the same as you, but yeah, 7.
There's a really good flavor in that, and it was actually super juicy. I just know how long that took. So for me, based on flavor, 7.5 out of 10.
There you go, 21.5. Next up, sous vide chicken. One of the best ways to cook chicken if it's gonna be served cold is to sous vide. Now there's clearly some equipment here that not everyone might have, and I do not suggest you run out and buy it if you don't have one. So if you do have a sous vide, then great, use this technique. If you don't, then I suggest you using the poached method that we did earlier. But to sous vide, pretty simple. Chicken breasts, season with salt on both sides. Get it under that little tendy there. Oh, hello, little cheeky tendy. Then we're gonna place it into our bag. Hot tip, turn your bag inside out like that so you don't get it dirty on the edge that you're gonna try and seal. I'll save that tendy for later. You can flavor this with whatever you want. I'm gonna put some lemon in there, a little bit of thyme. And then I think it's important, especially with chicken breast, to put a little bit of fat in there. So I'm just gonna use a bit of olive oil. Close your bag and into your water bath or your water circulator. Now, temperature and time. This is set to 66 degrees Celsius, which is in Fahrenheit. And I'm gonna have this in here for 2 hours, but you can kind of go, 2 to 4 hours really. It's perfectly safe to eat once you cool that down at that temperature. You could do it as low as 62 degrees. The temperature that you're looking for, which is often 75 degrees it's referred to, is because it only has to reach that for a few seconds for it to be safe. If you're holding it at a lower temperature, effectively pasteurizing it, it's the length of time which actually is the control point for killing the bacteria. But for me, the temperature is more about how you're gonna eat it. If you're gonna pan fry this afterwards, you can take it as low as 62 degrees, more so for a texture point of view. If you're gonna eat it cold, I think you want to have it up to about 66 degrees because it has a better texture in my opinion when it's eaten cold. 2 hours later and this is ready to come out. At this point, if you are keeping this to have it cold, which you probably should. Take it out of the sous vide, leave it on the counter like that for half an hour, 40 minutes to let it cool down before you put it in the fridge. We're gonna taste it hot today though. Open your bag, pull your chicken out. I think it's perfect when it's cold. I think the texture's good for cold chicken, so great for a salad, great for a sandwich. I don't love it kind of like this as it's hot. So for that reason, I'm gonna give it a 6. 5.5, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Good chicken, but nothing overly exciting about it, so it's gonna get a 4 from me.
Even cooked the whole way through and you could definitely taste the lemon, but that's not for me. 4 out of 10.
With a grand total of 13.5, looks like the sous vide's out. But next up's a fun one, the shawarma. So the thing is with shawarma is that it's technically should be cooked vertically and spun around with the heat from the side. It's pretty hard to do at home, so by all means, you can just do the same marinade and in a really hot oven, bake it or grill it, or you can just hit it on the barbecue. But if you have got one of these, this also works. You can put this in the oven. So shawarmas can be lamb, goat, but is often chicken. And then it's kind of served in flatbread all over the Middle East. I've got chicken thigh and chicken breast here. And the reason being is because you want some of the fat content of the thigh, but I think the chicken breast also is good to kind of help bulk it out. So we're gonna trim this stuff up. Make sure it's not too thick, the thighs. If you have any scrappy bits, keep them, because we can put them in during the stacking part. And then the breasts we're gonna cut into pieces as well, about the same size as the thighs. So that's nice and thick, so we're just gonna cut that right in half. So you got 2 pieces. So the marinade, olive oil, 2 tablespoons, salt, paprika, cumin, coriander, and the juice of a lemon. Just give that a mix around, and then we're gonna add our chicken back to it. Probably should have used a bigger bowl, but hey, make sure it's all evenly covered. So once it's all evenly covered, it's time to stack. So I have this tray here that I got from Amazon. It's got a skewer in it. The reason I've got the onion at the bottom is to keep it up off the bottom. This is gonna go in the oven, in a fan force oven, so there's gonna be heat around it. I think if the chicken starts here, you're gonna struggle to get good color on that bottom. Start with a piece. So that's a piece of breast meat. You wanna alternate between breast and thigh, and that way you should get a more even distribution of the fat. You can use these pieces that we trimmed in between them as well. And you'll see the experts when they make these in the shawarma restaurants, they'll kind of get it to a point and they'll trim it down, and they're making them way higher. I'm not gonna bother trimming this down too much, or at all, to be honest. For that to kind of really take effect, you kind of really need it to be like a certain size. But so like I was saying, if you want, you can just marinate this like this in the bowl, and then shove it under your grill, or in your oven, or on your grill in your barbecue. The reason for the vertical cooking is that kind of the way that it cooks, the fat kind of drops down the outside, and you can kind of carve a piece off and then continue cooking throughout the night. But we're gonna cook this all the way through in the oven. Cool, so that's it. That's just gonna sit in the fridge uncovered for about an hour just to marinate. Because there's quite a lot of lemon juice in there, you don't wanna marinate it for much longer than that, or you're gonna start breaking down the proteins, and then we'll chuck it in the oven. So that's a 200-degree fan force oven. I think it's gonna struggle to do it if you don't have a fan force oven, because you kind of want that airflow around it. I reckon that's gonna take a good 45 to 50 minutes, but I'm gonna check it after 35. Oh, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? Just gonna let that chill out for a couple of minutes, then we'll slice them off. All right, let's get the team in. Definitely the driest we've had today, but saying that's not too bad. Seasoning's nice, 6.5 out of 10.
Good flavor, a bit drier than the other ones. I'll give it a 6.
Really good flavor in that. I definitely think I got the breast meat though, and it was on the drier side. I think that's a 6 for me.
All right, 18.5, not terrible, but it certainly wasn't the highest score of the day. Next up, something that might divide a few people, the air fryer chicken. I don't know why, but most chefs and like avid home cooks just hate on these things, and including myself for a long time. But the reality is they're in like 60% of homes and they do a pretty good job. They're effectively just an oven with a big fan. That's kind of all they are. So they're really great at like heating up things like chicken with a crispy outside without deep frying. So that's what we're gonna do today. The other thing that I'm not a huge fan of is tendies, and they're incredibly popular all throughout the world. It's like the laziest muscle on the animal, so I feel like it doesn't have heaps of flavor, doesn't have heaps of fat. However, if you crumb something and cook it till it's nice and crispy, most things taste good. So simple panko crumbing. Got some flour here, got some barbecue seasoning, salt and pepper, heavily seasoned, a couple of eggs beaten, and some panko breadcrumbs. All we do, in the flour, shake it off in the egg and the breadcrumbs. So like any oven cooking or deep fryer cooking, we want to preheat our air fryer. So that's set to 190 degrees Celsius, and I'm gonna let that preheat for about 4 or 5 minutes. So why haven't I included a fried chicken recipe in these 12 types of chicken? Because I've got like 4 YouTube videos already on this platform about how to do fried chicken. And a lot of people get scared of doing fried chicken at home, but it is one of those wonderful things that's definitely worth the mess. So go check those videos out, they're all linked down below. All right, the air fryer is almost hot. We're not gonna overcrowd the air fryer as well. We've got 8 tendies here, we're gonna do 4 at a time. So spray 4 of them on one side, and we'll put that sprayed side down in the air fryer. Then we're gonna spray the top, in they go. 5 minutes, we'll take them out and flip them, and finish them the last 5 minutes. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, look, that's pretty rubbish. So it's a 1 from me.
1. I'm also not a fan. I think if you're gonna have fried chicken, don't try and imitate it. Just get the real stuff. Link below to the videos. I'm not that harsh though. 3.
These are elite. They're not a 10 though. Not a whole lot of flavor. Love the crumbed fried chicken texture. 8.5 out of 10.
8.5.
That is wild.
It's so juicy still.
It tastes like cardboard.
The
There's
texture
zero
came-
flavour.
All right.
It doesn't even taste like chicken.
For the grand total of the tendies of the 12.5, it was clearly, I think that's the bottom of the table. The Spatchcock took it out. But I think the one thing I'd love you to take from this is that chicken can be juicy and delicious, doesn't matter how you cook it, and temperature is way more important than time. I bang on about this all the time. Get yourselves one of these. Thanks for watching, legends. Like this video if you're thinking from it, subscribe if you're not, and we'll see you next week for another recipe. Please.
He just finished the tendy that he hated.